dust of Bharat. And so hopefully she'll bless this session. And if not, at least we've got the Mangala Charan to bless this session.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much, Prabhuji, for the warm welcome. And it's my pleasure to be here, and I'm really humbled. Thank you very much for having me.
Oh my God. Oh, sorry, Mataji, please go ahead.
Sorry, I was just saying, hope everything was well.
Everything was wonderful. Bhakta
Mugo is excellent. I've given him the mandate now. So I was getting too much attached to this service, so I'm taking a back seat, but I'm there.
So he is the man with the plan when it comes to ISKCON Eldoret's Srimad Bhagavatam Sangha. And Hitesh Prabhu also is doing wonderful things for me. So maybe he could also render more service, trying to engage devotees from the African island of Mauritius in this Sangha as well. He's very well connected. So maybe we can have devotees from all over Africa as part of this Sangha. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Om Jnanatirmihannasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Juta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jetam Suruto Pangor Mama Mandir Materyati Matsarva Swapadam Bhojo Radha Madana Mohano Divyad Vrindaranya Kalpadrumadaha Srimat Ratnagara Simhasanasto Srimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prashtalivis Sevya Manosmarami Shriman Rasa Rasa Rambi Vamsi Vata Tatastitaha Karshan Venusvaner Gopi Gopinata Shriyestunaha Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyadeshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivashadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. So reading from Canto 3, second chapter, 29th verse. Chapter is still entitled The Remembrance of Sri Krishna, of Lord Sri Krishna. So would anyone like to read the verse, or should I go ahead and read? Actually, I'm going to read the verse because I'm very attached to this verse. It's a lovely verse and a lovely chapter and a wonderful canto and an amazing scripture. So, Sa eva go dhanam lakshmya niketam sita go vrisham charayan annugan kopan ranad venur ariramat. Translation by His Divine Grace, Srila Abhay Charanarvindam Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. While herding the very beautiful bulls, the Lord, who was the reservoir of all opulence and fortune, used to blow his flute, and thus he enlivened his faithful followers, the cowherd boys. I'll read that again. While herding the very beautiful bulls, the Lord, who was the reservoir of all opulence and fortune, used to blow his flute, and thus he enlivened his faithful followers, the cowherd boys. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chevam Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet. Nashta Praeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavati Sevaya. Bhagavate Uttama Shloker Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. So, purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Abhay Sharanarvindam Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. As he grew to 6 and 7 years old, the Lord was given charge of looking after the cows and bulls in the grazing grounds. He was the son of a well-to-do landholder who owned hundreds and thousands of cows. And according to Vedic economics, one is considered to be a rich man by the strength of his store of grains and cows. With only these two things, cows and grain, humanity can solve its eating problem. Human society needs only sufficient grain and sufficient cows to solve its economic problems. All other things but these two are artificial necessities created by man to kill his valuable life at the human level and waste his time in things which are not needed. Lord Krishna, as the teacher of human society, personally showed by his acts that the mercantile community, or the Vaishyas, should herd cows and bulls and thus give protection to the valuable animals. According to Smriti regulation, the cow is the mother and the bull the father of the human being. The cow is the mother because just as one sucks the breast of one's mother, human society takes cow's milk. Similarly, the bull is the father of human society because the father earns for the children, just as the bull tills the ground to produce food grains. Human society will kill its spirit of life by killing the father and the mother. It is mentioned herein that the beautiful cows and bulls were of various checkered colors, red, black, green, yellow, ash, etc. And because of their colors and healthy smiling features, the atmosphere was enlivening. Over and above all, the Lord used to play his celebrated flute. The sound vibrated by his flute would give his friends such transcendental pleasure that they would forget all the talks of Brahmananda, which is so praised by the impersonalist. So actually, we'll continue on the rest of the purport later on. So I'd like to just look at the verse again and show how it's actually divided into 3 themes, and we're going to address these 3 themes. So translation, while herding the very beautiful bulls, right? So the first point is that the Lord is herding the beautiful bulls. And as we read in the purport, at 6 to 7 years old, in the ilk of a Vaishya, or part of the mercantile community, Krishna is learning his trade. He's learning his craft. He's learning his occupational duty. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is occupational duties and varnashram, and how the Lord, and Prabhupada even says in this purport that the Lord is the teacher of human society. The Lord himself is showing that occupational duties and acting according to one's given occupational duty is indispensable. So indispensable that the Lord himself engages in his occupational duty. So moving on to the translation, the Lord who is the reservoir of all opulence and fortune. So the second thing I'm going to talk about is how the Lord, who is the reservoir of all opulence and fortune, and how even in spite of that, he engages in his occupational duty. And finally, used to blow his flute and thus enlivened his faithful followers, the cowherd boys. Then the final thing we're going to speak about is Krishna blowing his flute and the importance of Krishna's flute in terms of understanding and ultimately becoming fully surrendered and absorbed in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. So this chapter, as we've heard and we know, is about the remembrance of Lord Krishna. And this section of the chapter, from verses 25 to 34, are a very sweet synopsis of Krishna's Vraja Leela, as recounted by Uddhav to Vidhu. And we know here Krishna is referred to in this verse as Lakshmiya Niketam. Sa eva godhanam Lakshmiya Niketam. Lakshmiya Niketam means the reservoir of all opulence and fortune, the source. Lakshmiya. Lakshmiya means opulence, and Niketam means a reservoir. So he is the reservoir and he is the source of all opulence. And how interesting is it that this Lakshmiya Niketam, who in Vaikuntha has hundreds upon thousands upon millions of different residences, all which are made out of the most precious and valuable gleaming jewels, gilded in gold, and who has Lakshmi personally cleaning and maintaining and sweeping, forms, expansions of Lakshmi are maintaining these palaces. And yet, in his eternal form as Ishvara Paramam Krishna, right? Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. As the form of the Adi Purusha, the ethic Changsa Kalopumsha, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. As Bhagavan Swayam, he doesn't choose to live as a king in Vaikuntha, nor as a prince in Dwarka, nor as a prince in Ayodhya. He chooses to live as a simple cowherd boy. How interesting that is, that Krishna is choosing to live as a cowherd boy. So moving on to cowherd boys and Varnashram system, we see here that in this verse, we have Godhanam, the treasure of the cows. Go means cow, Dhanam means treasure or wealth. And Sita Govrisham, Sita means beautiful. Let's just make sure Srila Prabhupada has just. Sita means beautiful. Govrisham means cows and bulls, or the bulls. So Krishna has already taken on this responsibility of acting as a cowherd boy. And it's interesting, in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 3rd chapter, 23rd verse, Krishna says, Yadi hiyam na varteyam jatu karma natantrita mama vartmanu vartante manushya partha sarvasa. If I ever fail to engage in carefully performing prescribed duties, O Parth, O Arjuna, certainly all men would follow my path. So whenever Krishna descends onto this planet, Krishna follows the strictures and the injunctions of Varnashram. So what is Varnashram? Chaturvarnam maya shrishtam guna karma vibhagashaha tasya kartaram apimam vidya kartaram avyayam. So Chaturvarnam maya shrishtam, according to the 3 modes of material nature, right? And the work associated with them, the 4 divisions of human society are created by me. And although I am the creator of this system, Krishna is saying, you should know that I am the non-doer, being unchangeable. So the Lord is saying, I've created the 4 modes of, I've created the 4 varnas and the 4 ashramas. I've created this system. Krishna has also said in the previous verse 323 that he will follow this varnashram system. But of course, he's also saying that he is not subject to the varnashram system. This system is there for the elevation of mankind. But the Lord, to set an example to us, will enter into this system and show us perfectly how to follow this system. So we know that as Sri Ramachandra the Lord as Sri Ram comes and he acts as the perfect prince, as the son of Dasarath, and as the perfect king, Ram Rajya, after he returns from the forest. He has thousands of years as the perfect king. We also know that Krishna, as Dwarkadish, when Krishna lives in Dwarka, he acts as the son of Vasudeva and Devaki and is the perfect prince, an emissary for the Yadus. We also know that the Lord is Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He is known as Sannyas Shiromani. He is the crown jewel of all sannyasis. He shows the perfect example of how one, as a brahmana and as a sannyasi, should conduct themselves. When he took sannyas, he was so strict. He was so disciplined. He was so renounced. At one point, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was only eating a handful of food every single day for his every year for Chaturmasya. In fact, in Chaturmasya, it said that one can only eat as much food as a cow can eat in a mouthful grazing on the ground. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would literally be having every year for 4 months of the year, a tiny handful of food for 4 months, every single day. And some days Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would fast completely. And he's the Lord, he's the source of everything. He doesn't need to fast. And yet, just to show the proper etiquette of Varnashram, he would, for mankind to follow, he descended and showed the proper system. And yet we have Sri Krishna, Brajendra Nandana Sri Krishna, Vrindavan Krishna. He has come to set the perfect example of a Vaishya. Now, it should be noted that there are 4 Varnas and 4 ashramas. Varna means one's occupational duty according to one's psychophysical nature. So we have four Varnas. We have the Brahminical class. The Brahminical class are the educators, they are the thinkers, they are the academics, they are the transcendentalists. They are those people who deal with the metaphysical. They deal on a subtle platform. They deal with the soul. They deal with learning. They deal with things conceptually. Then we have the administrators. And so the Brahmanas are often equated to the head. The head is where we do our thinking. Now, the arms is where we take action. I did it with my 2 bare hands. That's what we say. I did it with my 2 bare hands. So the arms, the administrators who put the teaching and the theory of the brain into practice are the Kshatriyas. So the Brahmanas are acting as a conduit between the world and Brahman. Brahman means the spiritual nature, and this material nature is known as Prakriti. So the Brahmanas are giving us that access to the Brahman. The Kshatriyas are those who organize and administrate on the guidance and advice of the Brahmanas in this world. And actually, Kshatat Trayate, Kshatriya, Kshatat Trayate iti Kshatriya. The word Kshatriya is a combination of these words, Kshatat, which means fear or danger, Trayate, to relieve from, to relieve one of, to protect one from. So we have mantra, mantrayate, to free the mind or to protect the mind. That's why we chant japa, is to free the mind. And kshatat trayate, shatat means danger. Shatru, a kshatru is an enemy in Sanskrit. So kshatat trayate, one who is going to free us from danger. Now, what are the dangers? Dangers could obviously be bandits and dacoits, but it can also be that society becomes decadent. Society becomes misdirected. Society becomes very individualistic. Society becomes very exploitative. People operating within society miss the purpose of human life and start to indulge in the material nature as if it's their own, not knowing that everything is the property of the supreme proprietor, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. They start to think that this world is mine to enjoy. Let me steal this, let me plunder that, and let me just enjoy myself. So the Kshatriyas are there, understanding the principles of the Brahmanas, stopping society from degrading itself. The Vaishyas And so they're considered the arms. The Vaishyas are sometimes equated as the abdomen of society, or sometimes as the thighs of society. But the abdomen, I find, is the most fitting example. Because what is the nature of the abdomen, or the organs within the abdomen? When you eat food, it goes into the abdomen. It is then digested and it is distributed across the whole body. If there's energy needed at the feet, it is distributed. If there's energy needed at the brain, it is distributed there. If it's needed at the arms, it's distributed there. So it's brought together and then dispersed. So the Vaishyas perform that function in society. They will, trade. What is the basis of trade? They will take materials where there is an abundance in one place, for example, a gold mine. It's concentrated, there is an abundance in one place, and they will then extract it from that place and distribute it for where there is a scarcity, right? And in exchange, they will take something where there's abundance, something else, and then they will distribute it where there is scarcity. So that is the nature of the Vaishya. And then the Shudras are, so that is the abdomen of society, aggregating and then distributing when there is a need. The Shudras are then considered the feet or the legs of society. And without the feet or the legs, there can be no movement and there can be no progression. You can be doing things with your hands to organize, but you cannot progress forward. You will be motionless without the feet. So there are two types generally of Shudras. There are the skilled workers and there are the unskilled workers. So the skilled workers refers to poetry, the arts, the poets, the sculptors of these beautiful temples. So the unskilled are those who are performing, kind of labor function. Now, it would be easy to dismiss these activities as superfluous, but the vision of the Brahmanas and the protection of the Kshatriyas and the availability of the resources from the Vaishyas can only be manifested through the labor of the Shudras. You can envisage a beautiful temple. You can secure the land for a beautiful temple. You can gather the resources for a beautiful temple, but you can only build the beautiful temple if the skilled and unskilled workers are there to allow it to manifest. So the progress of society is based on the Shudras. Now, the reason that I've come to give this four-fold hierarchy is, of course, Krishna himself is showing the nature of a Vaishya. But we can see that Krishna has accepted the role of a cowherd. So actually, even within these four classifications, there are sub-classifications. So some Vaishyas will be, as I mentioned before, traders. Some will be goldsmiths who create the beautiful ornaments for the king. Some will be involved in produce and bringing produce or rare spices or rare minerals to the court. And some will be nomadic and dealing with animals. And in terms of the classification of, how could you say, in terms of prestige, actually, the nomadic class of Vaishyas are not considered the most prestigious. In fact, they are considered the least prestigious of all of the Vaishya communities. The goldsmith may have direct access to the kings and queens. The traders may have access to incredible wealth, at least externally, in terms of dealing with precious stones and metals. But the nomadic cowherds, the gopas and gopis, sometimes they move from village to village. We even know that Krishna was in Gokul and then ultimately he moved to Nandagram. So the place of dwelling and residence is not always fixed. They are moving constantly with the herds of animals. And they don't necessarily have any big important title. So what's important to realize here is, especially when you consider the four varnas as the four parts of the body, there's an interesting story that it's a parable. I think it's a Vedic parable, but I've heard it spoken many times, that on one occasion, the rest of the body became envious of the stomach. You know, the brain was saying, I think of how to go and gain food. And the hands were thinking, I'm the one that collects the food and prepares the food and feeds the food. And the legs were thinking, I'm the one that goes back and forth to gather the food from one place and the other place. And yet the stomach receives all the food, and all he does is sits there. In fact, sometimes he just sits there and he gets big and unsightly. And so the rest of the body conspire together to try and exclude the stomach. So they said, you know what? We're not just going to give the stomach an easy ride. So the brain said, I'm not going to think about going to food, and I'm certainly not going to chew. And the hand said, I'm not going to prepare the food. And the feet said, I'm not going to walk over to gather the food. And then we'll teach that greedy stomach a lesson. And you know what happened? Yes, the stomach started rumbling. But then the arms became weak and the feet became fatigued and the brain couldn't think because there was no energy which the stomach was providing to fuel the rest of the body. So the moral of this story is that just as all the different parts of the body are interrelated, so too all the 4 varnas within Varnashram system are indispensable. For the proper functioning of society, we cannot look down our noses or be critical or be dismissive of the importance of any one of the 4 varnas. In order for a body to function properly, all 4 aspects of the body need to work together. In order for a society to function properly, all 4 aspects, right? And all of their sub-aspects within those 4 aspects. There are many different subcategories. You know, we talked about the subcategories of the Shudras, the subcategories of the Vaishyas, equally of the Kshatriyas. You may have a general or you may have a foot soldier. They're both Kshatriyas, but they're subdivisions. You may have an emperor or you may have a junior minister. They're both administrators, but they're different classifications. So we shouldn't think that any of these 4 classifications or any of the sub-classifications are dispensable. We should be dismissive. We should be kind of feel ourselves superior to. No, the success of any of those varnas is intertwined with our success. Our success is their success. Their success is our success. So Krishna himself is showing Krishna as the supreme source, supreme personality of Godhead, the supreme source of all of the different avatars, has assumed the role of a cowherd boy. He's assumed the role of a cowherd boy. And he is demonstrating this verse in Bhagavad Gita. Sadrisham chestate, how does it go? Sadrisham chestate svashaya prakriter jnana vannapi prakritim yanti bhutani nigraha kim karishyati. Which is, even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature. For everyone follows the nature he has acquired from the 3 modes. What can repression accomplish? So we may ask, why is Krishna demonstrating how to behave in the Varnashram system? Why has he created this Varnashram system? And why, as devotees, is Varnashram system important to us? Didn't Srila Prabhupada say we are not this body? Surely the Varna is related to this body. Surely this Varna is related to this mind, you know, our psychophysical nature. But we must understand that while, yes, eternally, we are not this body, we are the soul. Do we ever use that same logic when we come to eat? If we're very hungry, if we're really hungry, say, oh, please, Mataji, Prabhu, can I have some prasadam? If somebody said to you, you're not this body, you're the soul, stop worrying about your bodily nature. You'd be like, hey, that's not going to help me. I need some prasadam. Stop telling me I'm not this body. I need food for my stomach and for my body to exist. You're not this body. You're the soul. If somebody, you know, we cannot accept that logic. We may not be the body eternally, but we cannot deny that we have a body. We have a body because we have attachment to this material nature, And this body and this psychology is a product, is a manifestation of our previous activities for millions and millions and billions of births. It is the operative manifestation of our karma. Srila Prabhupada used to say, if you want to understand somebody's karma, just look at their face. Just look at their face. You'll understand that karma. So our psychology, so the body is made up of 5 material elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether. The subtle body is made up of 3 subtle elements: the mind, intelligence, and false ego. So the physical body, stula sharira, the subtle body, sukshma sharira. We have this. Our soul is encaged within it. And so long as we have so the physical body may change, but the subtle body will go with the soul life after life. And according to the karmic impressions kept in the subtle body, we will manifest another physical body. So the point is understanding the nature of our physicality, understanding the nature of our psychology, and then acting according to that is the way that we can remove this karma permanently. One could say, if I'm not this body, I'll destroy the body and then I'll free my soul. No, you may destroy the physical body, but you cannot destroy the subtle body. The subtle body, the mind, the intelligence, the false ego. You can destroy the mind. You have brain dead people, shoot them in the brain and the mind stops working. That's not true. You see, the mind operates through the vehicle of the brain, but the consciousness is fundamentally difficult. The logic would be, I want to destroy the internet, therefore I shoot my computer. You may destroy your computer and therefore you can't see the internet operating, but that doesn't mean that the internet ceases to exist. It just means that your mechanism by entering into the internet has been removed. In the same way, just because you destroy your physical body, your subtle body, and the karma that is attached to it will persist and will ultimately drive your soul into another physical body. Now, the only way to get rid permanently of the physical body and the miseries that go with it, and the subtle body, which travels with us as long as we're in the material world life after life, is to perfect our engagement within Varnashram system. We have to understand. Krishna is saying, a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature. Everyone follows the nature he has acquired from the 3 modes. What can repression accomplish? And in fact, later on, very important verse, 1847 in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is saying, it is better to engage in one's occupation, even though one may perform it imperfectly, than to accept another's occupation and perform it perfectly. Duties prescribed according to one's nature are never affected by sinful reaction. And in the purport, Krishna said, Srila Prabhupada says, without being fully in Krishna consciousness, one should not give up his occupational duties. No one should suddenly give up his prescribed duties and become a so-called yogi or transcendentalist artificially. It is better to be situated in one's position and try to attain Krishna consciousness under superior training. Thus, one may be freed from the clutches of Krishna's Maya. So the point is, once we understand what our psychophysical nature is, if we are Brahminical and we have the tendency to renounce, then fine, we should enter into the ashram, the brahmacharya ashram, and act according towards it, make a lifelong commitment. If we have the psychology of an administrator, of a kshatriya, then we should act according towards it. We shouldn't try and become a businessman. Yeah, I've got a really good opportunity to be a businessman and try and engage in business. If one has the psychology and the material body and psychophysical proclivity to act as a kshatriya. Because why? We will, and Prabhupada even says it in the verse we've just read, 1847. He says, we will develop the conditioning of a Vaishya without removing the condition of a kshatriya. We will develop both. Now, the point is, if you act perfectly, or imperfectly, but according to your own psychophysical nature, constantly offering the results of that to Krishna, ultimately Krishna will make you fully detached from any occupation, any karma, any activity, and anything to do with this material world. If you try to artificially repress, or if you try to engage in a different different dharma and a different varna, you will do nothing but increase your attachment to this world. By acknowledging who you are and by engaging in who you are, all the while offering everything to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then we can slowly and gradually become free of this material body and this material consciousness. Of course, we should never lose sight of the fact that it is our objective to be 100% surrendered unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But we must realize and acknowledge that in order to come to that period of that position of complete surrender, we must go through and we must renounce and fully surrender attachment to this identity of being in the material world and to all of the karma which is attached to millions and millions of lifetimes in the past. So how to know, well, what our psychophysical nature is? You can say it's all well and good. You have to know what your psychophysical nature is. You have to understand your varna, and then you have to act according to your varna. But no, I didn't even know the concept of varna. And I've done my degree and my postgraduate, and I'm doing this. And, you know, how are we supposed to know? Well, guidance is given there in Bhagavad Gita. The 18th chapter, verses 41 to 48 are a very good starting point, where Krishna, he goes into detail. This is the nature we can even, this is the, can quickly skip on to that actually, we'll quickly read that. Maybe we don't have time, but the Shastra does give an indication. But we should also realize that education, educare, comes from the Greek educare, just like vidya comes from the root vid, which means to understand, or true objective knowledge. Vidya means knowledge. Vid means the essence of all knowledge. The essence of all knowledge, educare, education, means, educare literally means to bring out that which is within. Education is not about taking a book, memorizing its contents, and being able to regurgitate. That's facts. But that is not education. That is not the pedagogy by which we can apply something in any context of life. You see, education is for wisdom. What we currently do is to acquire knowledge, facts. There is a difference between wisdom and facts. Facts, anyone who has a functioning brain can read something and remember it. That's fine. But that is very context specific. If I spend my whole life reading accountancy books, that's fantastic if I have to do something accountancy related. But if I have a problem in my personal life, if I have a crisis of my identity, if I'm trying to decipher what's right and wrong, will that help me? No. There's nothing wrong with having the skill set of accountancy. That is knowledge, but that is not wisdom. The first and principal purpose of education is to give wisdom. Wisdom is what? Wisdom is having a sense of who I am, where I'm from, and where I'm trying to get to. Because if I understand that fundamental concept of who I am spiritually, who I am psychologically, who I am physically, I may be in any other context. If I need to understand a bit of accountancy, I can get that knowledge. If I need to understand something about travel, I can get that. But if I'm fundamentally unsure of what my purpose is, it doesn't matter if I'm the best traveler or the best accountant or the best football player, I will never be able to have that lasting happiness. My life will not be oriented towards my ultimate goal and my ultimate benefit. So education, the whole point of education within the Vedic times, and even if you look at the ancient Greeks and Romans, and even in Western paradigms, Oxford and Cambridge, these institutions were actually principally revolving around understanding who am I, Where am I from? Where am I going? And ultimately, who am I? Who is God? And how do I connect with him? Oxford and Cambridge were only for members of the church. They were to do with things to orientate our understanding of who am I eternally, who is God, and how do we connect with him. So that isn't to dampen any of the other skills, but that should come as a secondary layer. Becoming skilled as a doctor, as a teacher, as astrophysicist, as whatever, lawyer, this is all great. But that cannot be a proper, that is not a substitute for us understanding the real question of who am I physically? What is my Sanatan, who am I spiritually? What is my Sanatan Dharma, my eternal Dharma? And what is my psychophysical nature in this world? What is my Swadharma? What is my occupational Dharma, why I'm in this world? Because only once you've got those two things sorted, do you then layer on top the skill set of what you're going to pursue. Without that, it's like Srila Prabhupada said, zeros. A bank account can have 10 zeros. If there is not a 1 before it, it is all valueless. There's no value. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. But you put 1, 1. 1, 1 is worth more than a million zeros. But if you put that 1, 1 in front of those million zeros, then it has value. In the same way, the one, the real source of knowledge and learning or ultimate wisdom is to know who I am, where I'm from, where I'm going, who is God, how do I connect with him? Then everything else can be layered on top. So unfortunately, we are devoid of these educational institutions that really from a very young age, Srila Prabhupada would mention that actually education begins in the womb. When Parikshit Maharaj's father, Abhimanyu, was actually educated by Arjuna in the womb, how to get into the Chakravyuha. So while it may not have been available to us, we can try and do our best. Then whoever the young people are, people who are new to devotional service, try to give them wisdom and guidance so they can act according to their varna. And if they are more attuned to what their varna is, they are more able and empowered to be able to purify that varna. It will actually, what's the word? Rocket power their spiritual progress. So much so that Srila Prabhupada even lamented, only half of my work is done. I've given everyone the spiritual principles, the perfect spiritual principles, but I have not yet executed and re-established Varnashram Dharma, allowing people to engage their psychophysical nature in Krishna's service and thereby purifying themselves of it so they can come to the pure spiritual nature. So I hope that I've tried to, it's quite a complex topic, but the very fact that Krishna is acting as a cowherd boy perfectly, he's training up at the right ages, he's taking out on a daily basis the cows, shows once again that Krishna, the importance that Krishna places on Varnashram system. But then the question can be asked, why is it that Sakshat Hari appears as a Vaishya? Why not as a Brahmana, like Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Why not as a king, as Sri Ramachandra or as Dwarkadish? Why as a Vaishya? Why too as the lowest rung of the Vaishyas, the least prestigious rung of Vaishyas? And the answer to this can be found actually even within this verse. How interesting it is that Krishna is referred to as the reservoir of all opulence and fortune. And yet he's walking around with cows and boys in a village. And that's because the greatest freedom, people put so much stock on opulence and wealth and acquisition, which is wonderful, It's a great resource to have. But if you don't have time to use those resources, then what is the value of them? So then people may say, okay, well then time is the greatest resource. But imagine if you had all the resources and you had all of the time, but you didn't have freedom. There are many people in white-collar prisons, maybe even in high-security prisons, who are extremely wealthy, And they may have many years of life ahead of them, but they are imprisoned. And therefore their resources and their time they cannot utilize. Because freedom, true freedom, is the greatest opulence. Now, you see, even Sri Ramachandra, you could say, okay, he is the king of the most powerful empire in the form of Ayodhya. But when the citizens reprimand, some misguided and scandalous citizens started reprimanding him, why has he brought Sita Devi back after she lived with somebody else? Of course, Ramachandra knew that Sita Devi was faultless, but because of the responsibilities of being a king, he said, I cannot lose the confidence of my citizens, otherwise they will not trust my judgment. They will start to question my impartiality in other contexts. Therefore, he sent Sita away to Valmiki's ashram. So even the Supreme Lord, when he acts as a king, he is not fully free. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he could not speak to Maharaj Prataparudra because he was a king. He said, I cannot be associated with worldly-minded people. There were many female devotees who he could not associate with because of the strictures of being a sannyasi. But Krishna, Swayam Bhagavan Sri Krishna, he comes as a cowherd. He comes as a cowherd boy. They have the freedom, of course, they have some responsibilities, but as far as the Varnashram system goes, he had the freedom to roam wherever he wanted amongst the forests of Vrindavan, whether it's Mahavan or whether it's Pampiravan or whether it's Vrindavan. He could wander between the different forests. He could wander in the middle of the night and meet the gopis. He could wander in the day, sometimes going to the Yamuna, sometimes climbing trees, sometimes picking fruits. He has complete freedom. And this shows the fact that the highest realm of the spiritual world is so free. What does that mean? There aren't rules and regulations, and therefore the expression of love can come without any formality. You are free to show your love to Krishna. Krishna is free to show his love back. There's no rule. There are very limited rules and principles which will come in the way with the true expression of love. You can't put your arm around Narayan's shoulder. You can't feed Sri Ramachandra. You can't feed him a flower when he closes his eyes instead of a laddu. You can't climb on Dwarkadish's back. But you can do all of those things in the free and the informal context of Vrindavan. So that's why Krishna, as a Supreme Personality of Godhead, eternally exists as a cowherd boy, because he's free to fully love and be loved by the residents of Vrindavan. So Varnashram has then led us into why Krishna lives as a cowherd boy, which has now led us into the third point, which we'll try and wrap up quite quickly, which is the importance of Krishna's flute. So at the end of this verse, it said that Krishna used to blow his flute, and thus he enlivened his faithful followers, the cowherd boys. So what we'll do, we'll read the end of this purport, but the point that I'll make is that Krishna has many Gitas. Gita means a divine song. So he has the Bhagavad Gita, the supreme song of the personality of Godhead. He has the Uddhav Gita. So Bhagavad Gita is narrated to Arjuna. He has the Uddhav Gita that he narrates to Uddhava. He has the Gopi Gita, which he narrates to the gopis. But there's even a Venu Gita. There is a Gita, a divine song, which Krishna narrates via his flute. And this is in the Srimad Bhagavatam 10th canto, 21st chapter. And this Venu Gita, understanding the Gita is...
In Calle Jalón, dormitorios, same, like this. Those dormitorios, 85 meters, for 5,75,000 euros.
What? You know what I'm thinking?
Oh, I think somebody's become there we go. So the Venu Gita, it's Mataji, Hare Krishna Mataji. The Venu Gita is actually the Gita of the flute. And this flute is one of the many things that makes Krishna Krishna. It's one of the many things that makes Krishna all attractive. And in this age of Kali, the flute has come as the mridanga. The flute has reincarnated as the mridanga. So just in the way that Krishna charms all of the gopis in Vrindavan, all the residents of Vrindavan with his flute, in the age of Kali, he attracts all the living entities through the mridanga that is played in Kirtan. And that's why Srila Prabhupada said that my books are the Brihat, this printing press and my books are actually it was Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Srila Prabhupada. They said the Brihat Mridanga, the giant Mridanga that will attract all living entities, are Srila Prabhupada's purports. So ultimately Srila Prabhupada's purports are a Mridanga, Brihat Mridanga, which is Krishna's flute. And Krishna's flute is non-different from Srila Prabhupada's purports, attracting all the living entities to Krishna's eternal service. So I'll stop there, but I'll request everyone who wants to understand more about Krishna's flute to read 10th canto, 21st chapter, which is the Venu Gita. And we'll we'll just read the end of this purport, which is from the Brahma Samhita, where Brahma is saying, I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who plays on his transcendental flute. His eyes are like lotus flowers. He is decorated with peacock plumes, and his bodily color resembles a fresh black cloud, although his bodily features are more beautiful than millions of cupids. These are the special features of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. I hope that was okay. Are there any comments, questions, and corrections? I'm sorry that we've only got a few minutes left. I tried to, again, overly ambitious with how much I'm trying to get into the class.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Hitesh Prabhu.
Yeah, thank you for very nice class. Well, I was thinking about a critical analysis about you explain about the Devi Varna ashram, but we even have this material perverted version of by birth, and even the socialism and capitalism. We understand that anywhere where there are two people, we need organization. Even in a house, in a family, who's going to cook, who's going to earn the money, who's going to do the preparation, all that, we need organization. Even in the temple, we need organization. So this Varna ashram, especially I'm talking about this Devi Varna ashram, is the balanced system. And this is what even Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramanan Ray, when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asks Ramanan Ray, like how to please him, how to please Krishna, and he was talking about this Varna ashram, the Devi Varna ashram. So I was thinking about Srila Prabhupada had a conversation with a Russian professor, where in science of SSR, in SSR, where Srila Prabhupada was explaining to the professor who had a misconception of the Varna ashram. He used to think like it's by birth the caste system. And Srila Prabhupada very nicely explained about how even his own government, his own country, is based on this Varna ashram. Like we need to have the Brahmanical, the police, we need to have even the Vaishya, and even the Shudra, all that, which was very convincing for that professor. But there's other points that we should also know that Krishna sent us to this material world for a very specific purpose of we living being, of enjoying this total freedom. We always wanted to be independent. When we left Goloka Vrindavan, we wanted to enjoy this independent existence, independent knowledge, independent love, independent pleasure. That's why we have come to this material world. And even by this perverted version of this Varna ashram, sometimes we even enjoy this independent Varna ashram without Krishna, which is wrong, which is normally wrong. And Srila Prabhupada emphasized here, like if with time we are going to leave this exploitation of Varna ashram without Krishna, then it will end up to be like that dry social system without God, which is not Devi Varna ashram. So we are supposed to be very careful, especially we are reading Srila Prabhupada's instruction. We are supposed to be very careful not to be confused by this material education of socialism, capitalism, and get carried away with this birth Varna ashram, by birth system, caste system. We're supposed to stick to follow the Devi Varna ashram by really putting Krishna in the center and following the words of Guru. That's all, Prabhu.
So did you have a specific, that was a beautiful comment and I really appreciate it. Was there a specific question in there that you wanted
No,
me
it was just a comment, Prabhu.
Very nice. And I think that's a very important point. And in fact, I really appreciate the sentiment in the 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, as I mentioned, verses 41 to 48. Krishna gives a synopsis of the 4 different varnas and how to act. But then from verses kind of 49 all the way up to 65 and 66, Krishna then talks about not just how you should act according to your varna and your ashram, but how you must keep Krishna in the center of everything. And in fact, verse 57, Krishna says, in all activity, just depend upon me and work always under my protection. In such devotional service, be conscious of me. So Krishna is saying, work under my protection. And then in 58, he says, if you become conscious of me, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life. Conditioned life means the varnashram system. You will pass through the obstacles. If, however, you do not work in such consciousness, but act through false ego, which Hitesh Prabhu, again, that's what you were talking about, becoming this enjoying mentality, feeling proud of your material achievements, right? If you act according to your varna, but with false ego, not hearing me, Krishna is saying, you will be lost. So further to your point, that varnashram system with Krishna at the center is elevating, is purifying, will bring you to the, most probably bring you to the point of pure bhakti. So if you follow Srila Prabhupada's system, 16 rounds, 4 regulative principles, and you follow according to your varna, your ashram, keeping Krishna in the center of all your activities, it will become purifying. If you do some shadow attempt at varnashram, pretending, yes, I'm doing this for Krishna, but inside you're just trying to maneuver things for your own enjoyment according to your false ego, Krishna is saying, hey, you will be lost. So thank you for that point, Prabhu. And again, that part of the Bhagavad Gita, 1840 till about 1866, is very important on this topic. Real synopsis. Anything else from anyone else?
Krishna Prabhuji, please accept my humble obeisances for Guru Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for that great discourse on Varnashram Dharma. I also had some question that I was thinking about, but I feel like you have really tackled on it, on how we can get to know really what is our Dharma. Because I was seeing like where Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, it's better to do your duty, as you said, imperfectly, than doing another person's duty perfectly. But again, this duty is not by birth, it's by association with the modes of nature or this prakriti. If I'm not born like a Shudra or a Brahmana, it's my association with the modes that I become, probably a Vaishya or so. With that thought, I was feeling, how can I really know this is really my varna? Maybe sometimes I am so good at a particular dharma, maybe teaching, but I am here trying to be another accountant or a doctor, but it's I am doing it easily. I'm doing it so well, but really my dharma could be maybe teaching, which I am not doing it perfectly. I'm doing it perfectly. And I don't know, after your class, I've seen it's quite more intricate than maybe the success of one varna. Maybe there's definitely that inner inclination of nature and trying to see. But thank you for that
I think it's a very
discourse on
no, it's a very good. It's a very good point, Prabhu, that you've made, right? So if I've captured what you've said, is that were you asking, you may have trained in one way, but then you may have a proclivity another way. So then what do you do in that situation? Was that the gist of your point, Mugo Prabhu?
Yes. In terms of my varna is by association, and Krishna is talking about if I do someone else varna perfectly, it's not good. But again, I really do not know what my varna is, because it's by association with the modes of nature, it's not by birth. So what is when Krishna says, I find.
So can I make? I just want to make some points. I'm going to try and clarify. Yes. Now, there's three things to be understood, or maybe two things. Number one is, you see, one's varna does not just mean the activity that one. So you have the activity and the occupation which you are pursuing, right?
Yes.
Which you could say is my varna. If I'm here chopping wood, you could say that okay, I'll give an example. If I'm here cooking, you could say, okay, you're a cook. But if my mentality is that I want to protect my country and I want to be on the battlefield, and actually I'm very good at fighting, even though my occupational varna may be as a cook, my actual psychophysical nature, the varna I should be pursuing, is as a warrior, as a kshatriya. So we have to realize that just because we are pursuing something as our occupational varna does not mean that that is necessarily what our psychophysical nature should be doing. Do you see? Some people say, I'm cooking, therefore my psychophysical nature is as a cook. But that's not necessarily true. You may have just ended up doing this because you didn't realize that your nature was to do something else. Do you see that there's a difference? So what we need to do is ensure that what we engage ourselves in is actually according to our kind of mentality and to our attributes. So an example is when Bhima, there were 5 Pandavas, Bhima had to go incognito. Bhima is the older brother of Arjuna. And while he was in disguise, he actually acted as a cook. His name was Vallabh. And he was a cook in a court because he needed to hide. But just because Bhima is there as a cook doesn't mean that his varna was as a cook. Bhima was one of the greatest warriors, greatest kshatriyas that there has ever walked on this planet. And the fact that he was engaging in that activity as a cook did not mean that his proper varna was of a cook. Now, does that point make sense? Does that make sense, Dennis Prabhu? Did you catch that? Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. It makes so much sense.
Okay.
It's really great. Thank you so much. Any other? We can end the meeting. I see Professor Ikida with us today. Can kindly end the meeting for us? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna. Are we going to end the session?
Yes. You kindly end the session, Mataji. Yes.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for this wonderful session. I have missed your sessions before, so I'm really happy to be here, and really explained the Varnashram, and how it is because of the association of the modes that you are in that makes you what you are. So let us all unmute and chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra once in glorification of Krishna Arjuna Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai. His Grace Krishna Arjuna Prabhuji ki jai.
Yeah.
Vanchakalpatarubhascha kripa sindhu bhayevcha Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hari Hari Bol. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. I hope you're all doing very well in your Krishna consciousness. And I look for, when are you getting initiated, Dennis Prabhu?
I'm not yet sure, but I am aspiring from His Grace Madam Gopal Prabhuji.
Wonderful.
Yeah, yes.
So we look forward to you giving some of these classes in future.
Thank you so much for the blessings to share more.
Krishna.
Dennis Prabhu is inspiring a lot of other devotees. So definitely he will be giving classes later on in a year or two.
I will be the first one to tune in for sure. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining in.